Ladies and gentlemen, is this thing on? Yes. Part 2, or if you didn't even see the first video, this is a video on my story with autism and identity in my 20s. If you didn't see the first part, which is why, an analysis on why at least I think autistics struggle with identity, check out that part 1 in the link. The link is in the description below. So with that, I tell you my story of identity in my 20s. So again, identity I think is really tough for those on the spectrum. Definitely tough for me. So let's go into it. So my second year of college, I actually went away to college. I stayed home at first. And college is all about that time of finding identity, whether you were on the spectrum or not. So I go to college, and first thing that happens is I get invited to be on the track team. I used to compete in cross country and track in high school. I wanted to do this unattached race, and the coach there was like, "You're that guy from that one high school who ran great times." I'm like, "Yes, sir, that's me." Join the team. Fuck it, okay. It's something that's the hand that extended out to me. So I talked in my last video is a lot of us on the spectrum will take the first hand that grabs us in, and we gravitate towards that because it's something. So yeah, screw it. I'm on the track team now. And right away, there was a disconnect. These guys were pretty jockey, and, they were kind of alpha. And I'm like, it came off egotistic. And I was this very dorky, chic guy who just was still kind of off. Right away, the coach knew I was on the spectrum. He told me later. He was like, "First time I met you, I knew." I had a grandson on the spectrum. Hopefully. You still have. Anyways. So, I just wasn't clicking with this team. And right away, I'm like, damn, this isn't working. So a little bit after I joined the team, there's a couple ladies on the team. And they extend, and I say this not in a great way, they extend a hand out for me. And in a form of taking advantage, they saw me as someone who was alone and vulnerable. And they were right. So right off the bat, they started taking advantage of me. Had me drive them everywhere, had them use my stuff, had them smoke my weed. And throughout this entire time, I was waiting for a return. Never got that. Nope. So that was around the time when I started getting into smoking weed, because it was a community that pretty much anyone could be a part of, because at that point they're chasing a feeling and not a relationship. They too are they're either discontent with their identity or don't even have one. So they gravitate towards something to forget about that and to reach this feeling where it's like, screw identity, let's all thrive and and romanticize the fact that we are in another world instead of this one. So we'll emphasize on that a little later. So that was kind of my descent into that. So eventually, another semester goes by, and I was no longer on the track team. And someone that I had met on the track team, I actually still keep in touch with this guy today, and very good guy. And he has a very, very strong Christian faith. And I had my thoughts on Christianity at the time. I was raised on it, but kind of departed from it. But it was something that, he extended the hand out saying, "Hey, come into this community." Cult. At least in this sense, we'll get to that in a second. So, I'm like, screw it. And so I was in this community that extended a hand out to me and brought me in. But it came with credentials. It came with a list of things you had to do, but more so a list of things you couldn't do. Like, oh my God, man, look at all that. And that you had to have an identity in Christ and not yourself. So there again is my further detachment of having my own identity. And, you had to conform. Otherwise, you were very looked down and just disregarded. Like, it was, I hate to use the word cult, but again, it was very much so in this case. And I'm not calling Christianity a cult. I guess I lied. I guess any form of organization could be a cult. I mean, I'm a religious studies major. I studied cults. That could be pretty much anything. Your church could be a cult. Your job anything can be a cult. Your sports team. Because as long as there's a need for conforming and identifying with such ideas in order to be accepted in this community, that can be looked at as a cult. But in this case, we'll call it community. So I'm actually very glad that I eventually left that community because, one of the leaders of the community, one of the, guys who ran it came out gay. They kicked him out. They fucking kicked him out. And, you couldn't even swear in this community. You couldn't drink. You couldn't do any substances, really. Nicotine and caffeine. The Christian community thrives and runs on caffeine. And again, if you're Christian watching this, I'm not trying to demean you guys. I'm not trying to separate you guys. I love you for who you love. But, just don't like Hitler or Osama bin Laden or, freaks like that. So, moving on. At this point, I was trying out different, outfits of identity. And at that time, I was very into the indie alternative kind of things. So I kind of turned into a hipster. I, joined the radio station we had there. And I'm like, you know what? If I put on this hipster personality, I will be accepted by these guys. And so it was also around that time I got very heavy into partying and drinking and all that just to, forget the fact I didn't have an identity and was around people who had this very similar mindset. And around that time, I wasn't getting accepted by that community. I was, kind of a rat piece of shit at the time and, the lack of identity really had to disconnect with those who actually did within that community. So I kind of got tossed out rather quick. Around that time, again, I was getting into partying. The other couple of friends I had, people I hung around, the partiers at the time, were fraternity dudes. So fuck it, I became a frat bro for a second, a wannabe frat bro. Like, I had knockoff Stan Lee's, or Stan Smith's, whatever the fucking shoes were and whatever at the time. I mean, I think what Stan Lee, Marvel, I hope I don't sound like an uncultured swine, and Stan Smith, my boy, an American Dad, one of my favorite cartoons. So, there's that. So, I was a wannabe frat dude for a long time. And dressed like one, that whole typical, if you stare at me for 10 seconds, my dad will sue kind of thing. So that was that. So I was a frat boy one summer. God damn it. But when I went back up to school at this fall, I moved into a house with 8 dudes. Where people thought we were a fraternity, because, we had some good times where we would, haze each other, waterboard each other, outdrink each other. We were a party house, but not a frat house. Again, these were kind of guys who were a little more redneck, hicky kind of guys, and I don't say that derogatively. I say that because they are their own tribe that I didn't really mesh with, didn't really click with. And But at the same time, I sacrificed so much of who myself was just so I could be accepted and just kind of, well, he's here. Instead of just being this distinct person that had an identity that they wouldn't understand and have a further disconnect. I learned later that, identity is something they, lean forth. And again, just kind of, I was doing a lot of partying that time because I didn't have an identity. And it damaged a lot of my relationships, which further snowballed the effect of not having an identity, saying fuck everyone, it's everyone else's fault because they're not who I am, and I, my egotistic fuck, have the best version of an identity. Well, I had none. I had none. And it got to the point where right after I graduated college last year, I was seeing somebody who I loved to death, but things didn't work out. I didn't have an identity. I was really big in my substance use, and she was going through stuff. So our last time speaking was us crying on a futon together, realizing we both didn't have an identity and that this wouldn't work out. So, shit. And that was earlier this year. And I put the good work in, and that's all about drive. It's all about drive. You have to have that drive. And fortunately, I have a very amazing therapist who's been huge in helping me be okay with myself, because I hated myself. I hated my quirks. I didn't want anybody knowing I was autistic. I didn't want anyone getting turned off by that, especially girls. I feel like girls get turned off by someone on the spectrum. Like, oh, again, it's that extra liability. So I was like, screw that. I'm not going to be anybody because I don't want people seeing my true quirky self. But as I realized growing and having an identity, people craved that. It was something that was appealing to people. And it's funny now because I think I have healthier relationships with those I went to school with hours away now than I did up there. I talk with them a lot, some folks up there, and some now more than I ever did when I was up there. And that's been when I started really being okay and confident in myself. And I only hope to further improve on that and be even more confident as I go. And doing these videos have been very helpful. I woke up this morning to several comments on some of my videos like, whoa, that came out of nowhere. That's great. And keep it up, I'm like, fuck yeah, man. I'm gonna do it. So that's my story with my identity. Being okay with my quirks, being the weirdo that I can be sometimes, but being okay with it. Playing my quirks in with my personality, it's kind of a craft. It's been kind of a craft in how can I make the best of my quirks, because I'll never be able to get rid of them. But how can I craft that so where it can be played in with my personality? Because I think personality is an art. I really do. I think it's an art that, some of us have to go through more trial and error than others. And we have to be able to tell the difference of being taken advantage of. And that's tough, especially if you are on the spectrum. It's tough, and unfortunately for me, it was through experience. So be very careful whose hand you grab when they are extending the first reach. And that's all I have to say about that. So again, I'm going to end it here. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you guys in the next video. If you haven't yet, please give this a like. If you haven't subscribed, please hit that little button down there. And share if you think anyone could benefit from this. Again, thank you so much, and with much love.